Welcome to another episode of Wine Guide TV. My name is Ben Edwards. This is Dan Sims. We are the Wine Guides. Oof, yes, we are. Today, we're going to guide you through some of Victoria's most exciting Shiraz, and we're going to do it through one single producer.
Well, I think it's an interesting exercise, isn't it? Because we're looking at mainly, I suppose, one particular region, but then they also make wine and source fruit from a number of different areas within Victoria. But it's still, there is a big Victorian theme today, especially with somewhere like Mount Langi.
Victoria, Victoria, Victoria.
Oi, oi, oi. Victor, Victoria.
Dan Buckle's the winemaker there. Trevor Mast made Mount Langi famous back in the late 80s, no, only kidding. But a while ago, 1990 Mount Langi Duran was on the front label of Wine Spectator alongside Henschke Hill of Grace and also Penfolds Grange. So that's the kind of esteem that Mount Langi Duran, and it is Duran as in like Duran, but Mount Langi Duran is really held. Dan Buckle has seen it evolve into a new era.
Definitely.
And really from 2004 was his first complete vintage where he had the fruit, all control of the fruit and all of the winemaking. And he is a talented young winemaker, and I know that the Rathbone family who own Mount Langi Duran are very, very fortunate and very grateful that they have him.
Well, I think these particular lineup of wines really shows that sort of hallmark of what Dan's attention to detail and to be able to see it from a progression from say almost like an entry level through to that sort of high end, the flagship wine, so to speak, of Mount Langi Duran.
Now we are going to do that, and we're looking from the Billy all the way through to the Langi, and of course there's the progression of price, but it's also more of a story of Shiraz in Victoria. And Shiraz in Victoria has the personality of being truly medium-bodied, plenty of flavour, but again, maintains lightness rather than being big, rich and over the top. So we're going to start with Billy.
Well, the Billy, I mean, this is just a really good rounded example of Shiraz. Again, in that medium-bodied spectrum, you still get a little bit of spice. Quite multi-regional, isn't it? So it's Victorian though, sorry, Victorian.
Fully Victorian. But it does come from some warmer areas, so there's some fruit from up north in that Riverina kind of area. Around Swan Hill, but also there's, It's
balanced out though, isn't it? Because you still got some really lovely juicy fruit characters, still got a little bit of spice. Again, it's that, I think that's a Victorian thing, that medium-bodied style of Shiraz and approachability to it. I quite like that one.
And you've got to remember, this is 07, the rest of the wines are 06. And the other thing about this particular wine is that it's really about juiciness. It's about being friendly for people to be able to enjoy. And it's a lovely way to introduce them to the joys of Victorian Shiraz.
Absolutely.
It's got as much alcohol as many of the Barossa and McLaren Vale styles, but maybe not quite as fruitcakey and rich. So if you like fruitcakey rich, go to McLaren Vale. But if you want something that's a bit lighter, this is a good place to start. Progressing, we're going to go onto Cliff Edge, and the vineyard happens to be, well overlooking other vineyards. And if you go to Mount Langi, you can see the actual Mount Langi Duran in the background. And I've always been a fan of this wine, and we've listed this on many restaurant wine lists in the past because it always delivers bang for buck. 2006, this does have a small percentage of Pyrenees fruit, which is giving it an extra bit of spice. What do you think?
Well, again, it's 2006. I mean, being in 2010, I mean, this is, it has a little bit of bottle age to it. Just rounds everything out a little bit, and its approachability to it. It's got some good texture, weight, elements to it. A bit of spice, but some really got that nice sort of, again, that sort of lovely fruit coming through.
It's pure blue fruits too.
Yeah,
and really lovely sweet core of fruit, and the tannins are very fine. It's quite long and expansive. And look, at first we looked at this and we've gone sort of 91 points. I'm going to go
probably put that up a little bit.
This is like 93 points, which is a very, very solid silver, pushing towards gold. The first wine's a bit more sort of, straight down the line. 88 points, drinking. Very solid. And now we're going to move on to Moyston. Now the story behind the Moyston vineyard.
Well, we're talking about elevation here. We're starting to see the difference between, it's a single vineyard wine. Seeing that sort of higher elevation, you're seeing a little bit more of that sort of cool fruit character to it. I won't say coolery.
Well, the acidity, coolery, you've said that before. The acidity is more pronounced. We've got whole bunch here. Now whole bunch means that the grapes have been fermented with everything going in their stems and the lot, and what that does is it gives it an extra spicy sort of complexity. But it also tones everything down. This is the lowest alcohol wine, 13.5%, and it's really quite fine. So if you're a Pinot drinker,
that's a great example.
Then this would be a great Shiraz for you. So if you really love those sort of more exotic Asian spicy kind of characteristics, perfect wine.
Well, also we talk about that whole bunch character, and it's kind of difficult to see, obviously, on camera. But the colour of this wine, again, it's not as dark and as dense as say some of the other one, and that's probably seeing the influence of those whole bunch. Just sort of not having it as dense and dark, but it's still there's still this little bit element of brightness to the fruit.
And interestingly enough, this is only 200 case production. So a lot more than 200 cases here, and this is almost 2,000 cases, which is not a lot of wine considering how good it is.
In particular.
Again, we're sort of looking at about a 92 point
Yep.
wine. Probably a bit higher. It could be a bit of a sleeper, that one.
Yeah, again, I think that it'll build and build and build in the glass, and definitely with a whole bunch, character. Just give it a little bit of time in the glass. Big, big, massive Shiraz glass, and that'll start to open up and be a lot more generous, I think.
Nice one. Okay, speaking of generous, since 2004, I mentioned before, Dan's been making this one and it's his baby, and he has just nailed it. We've had recent looks of different, verticals of these wine, and it's just brilliant. And it's deep and dark, dense, chewy, and bright. And when we talk about bright, we don't want dead fruit raisiny characteristics. We want the fruit to really express where it comes from. Now, Grampian's fruit always has this sort of graphite-y kind of mineral edge to it, and this wine typifies that. I think the research and development that has gone into that specific vineyard is at Mount Langi, and we were lucky enough to go up there and do a little bit tour up there, and it's amazing to see the research that's gone into it and seeing it actually the different components, elements coming together. It's just tightly wound, and I think this is. I mean, from that 2004 vintage when Dan sort of first came on board to the 05, to the 06, to the 07, coming up to the 08, there's a real lovely progression of style. Super wines. This is just one example of how one producer can make an array of styles, an array of prices, and something in there for everybody. Of course, they've got great resources to be able to do that, but at the end of the day, you need a very talented winemaker. So Dan Buckle, congratulations, good work. And on that note, rather than saying cheers, we're going to say na zdrowie.
Salute.